Hello, friends. Welcome back to Heartscapes, where we are learning the system of Reiki to be rooted, to be spacious, to be connected, and to remember ourselves. My name is Michaela. Welcome back to the studio. And welcome back to this next installment of an ongoing conversation that I'm having with my dear friend and colleague, Carrie Varela of the Reiki Healing Society, on the topic of integrity. This is being true to our way, navigating integrity in our Reiki practice. This is for you if you are curious about how to build the strength of the roots of your practice, or as a receiver of Reiki, how to look for those strong roots of integrity in the practitioners that you work with. This series has covered a range of topics, a range of aspects of our Reiki practice where we might look to build a deeper sense of integrity with ourselves, amongst ourselves and our clients, within the business aspects of our Reiki practice. And this week, we're going to look at building integrity socially and environmentally within our Reiki practice. And essentially, what that means to us is in what ways can our Reiki practice be a blessing to the communities, to the world within which we are situated, beyond the value of the product and the services that we provide. And so we are going to open up this conversation and see where it takes us. And as I do, I want to just, say again that this conversation comes from my and Carrie's, personal journey with this question of how to be in integrity with our Reiki practice. We're drawing on many years of walking through this question, of making mistakes, of making decisions, of coming to a greater place of balance within ourselves and our practices individually and in our community. And so we're offering them to you as something to reflect upon, potentially as a guidepost. We're not presenting this as the absolute truth, the absolute single and only way to be in integrity in your practice. We're merely sharing our journey and inviting you to reflect upon yours. And so with that, I am going to invite Carrie in and welcome you, Carrie, and welcome you viewers to this conversation. It's really fun to continue this ongoing discussion.
Yes, thanks, Michaela. And yes, been having so much fun talking about this and well, maybe hopefully making it a little bit more lighthearted and fun because integrity can be a challenging topic. And I don't know how many times I've been challenged by integrity or felt like the bar, at this height, and then doing the spiritual work, feeling the bar go up even higher for myself. And so I just want to name for myself and for anybody else who struggles with integrity or feeling like maybe integrity has some relationship to perfectionism. I invite you to take a few breaths, laugh at the process, enjoy the process of digging deep, and hopefully finding the sense, the reward from integrity, which Michaela and I have discussed. This reward is that when we are really in integrity and feel an alignment around what we're doing, it makes everything easier, actually, because we're not struggling with not feeling in integrity.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you start there, Carrie, before you go into our specific topic, because I think it is the sort of thing that can feel very dualistic. Like either we are a good person doing good things who's in integrity, or we're a bad person and we're out of integrity. And that's just not the reality, right? There's all kinds of places in our life, at different points in time when we just maybe don't know enough about the situation to, reconcile all of the complex pieces and really be in integrity with it. Or we've made choices that kind of step a little bit outside of our values and we need to then recorrect and course correct back in. But it's almost never the case that we're just fundamentally a bad person who's out of integrity. And if you're watching this video, you obviously have a concern about it. And so I love that you started there. And I know that values and aligning integrity with our personal values has been a really important kind of through line and thread that I know you've brought into these conversations quite a bit. And so I'm wondering what might come through for that and where you want to start.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I think of integrity, a working definition that I use is integrity is living in alignment with my values. And, I think the process of integrity, I think we've done it in a really linear way. So, starting with ourselves, moving to others, moving to um, the piece around cultural and spiritual appropriation, moving towards business. And so, this topic of integrity with as relates to socially and environmentally, it feels a little tangential. It feels a little bit wider. But I know for my own journey with this, it's like it was kind of where I wanted to start, because I got into this line of work because I wanted to make a difference, and not being satisfied necessarily with the small difference, but like a big one. I wanted to make a big impact and do something positive for the world, positive for my community. And so the work of fleshing that out and empowering myself in that direction was to align myself in such a way that I can create that bigger difference. And there's a lot of feelings of disempowerment in that, because a lot of times in my life I felt like, oh gosh, there's somebody who's hungry on the street and I don't have anything to give them, without sacrificing, my own needs. And or feeling really disempowered with big issues in the world, such as environmentalism, climate change, uh, deforestation, and the loss of diversity of wild animals. And so as I've evaluated my own, gone through those feelings of being empowered and disempowered, I finally kind of came to the conclusion that, I think it's important for me to charge an appropriate rate for what I do and not to devalue my work. And the more money that I have means that that's the more money I can do and give and redistribute into the world. And there's a powerful work that we do in between us, ourselves and our clients. It's a profound work. And so even I think our practice can stop there. We can just give fully of ourselves, give fully of this practice of Reiki to our clients and our students. And that in and of itself creates a ripple of good out into the world. My understanding of Reiki is that Reiki is really in service to a greater good. And part of my work is to really align my practice in such a way that I feel like the Reiki and the healing work can do that. It can radiate waves of positivity beyond myself, beyond my practice, and into the world. So I want to hear a little bit more, Michaela, about what this means to you before I go more specifically into how I've aligned my practice to do that.
Yeah. So for me, when I think about, in what ways can I imagine my business, my Reiki practice being a blessing to my community and to the world beyond the services that I provide? It really begins with my home, because my studio is in my home. It's the second floor of my home. And the grounds surrounding my house, the front yard, the backyard, are all spaces that are incorporated into my business in one way or the other. And so when I think about what are the resources that I have to share, money isn't necessarily the first one that comes to mind. For me, it's really in what way am I in relationship with this physical space, with the land that this home is on, and the way in which this space interacts with the community around me. So very much taking that kind of local out into the world perspective, literally from the perspective of my home. And so some of the ways that that looks as I think about, how can I, really solve the challenge that you posed of meeting my own needs, for income, for stability, for the flow of resources, and then also allow that flow to be fluid, to continue moving through me. And a lot of the ways that that looks is through the physical space that I have of access to. So for example, there's community organizations in my town that I've offered this space to use for different events, or meetings that they don't have to pay for. That is something that I can very easily open up the floodgates of a resource without negatively impacting myself. And so that's like an easy entry point. I really encourage us all to think about where are those places where we can, especially if we're struggling with this question of, where can we be a blessing in a way that feels easeful, that feels, just generous and easy. And so that's a really great place that I have started is, in what ways can I share this physical space with my community in ways that support things that matter to me. Similarly, utilizing my garden space as a resource for my community to be able to come through, to learn things, to have a space to gather has been another easy one. And then from there, I want to start looking, how can I take that next level, right? So that's the easy one, right? That takes very little effort and, no, doesn't cost me any money, and it doesn't really cost me any time to do the things that I just shared. When I start thinking about, well, what ways are this physical space that I get to live in that it's language around ownership can be so challenging, but let's just legally speaking, I own this house. So this space that I have ownership over, how can that be in relationship to the land that I'm on? And one of the questions that I really live into and continue to be open to what are the right answers for me is around the question of land back and what is the relationship between me, my business, this land that I live on, and the indigenous people of my region, which is the Nisan and Maidu. And this is a big and complex question. There are lots of different ways that people are wrestling with this question. Essentially the question is of what does a modern relationship between a colonizer group and a colonized group look like when this colonization has persisted for as long as this has, and we're as settled as we are on this land. There's a lot of different ways to answer that, and I know we did address some of it in our episode on cultural and spiritual appropriation. But it's a question that I allow myself to be in gently over time, because I can easily overwhelm myself with it. When I think about living on colonized land, living on land, again, even saying that I own this home, I can say I own this home, but I won't say that I own this land that the home is on. What does that relationship look like? And so I'm allowing myself to answer that question over time. Some of the ways that I've answered that, we do have a really robust and well run and organized cultural center, Maidu Cultural Center nearby. So I've been in relationship with that group for a while. And, firstly, as a point of learning, as a point of connecting, as a point of understanding, who is here and what are the activities that are alive and present here. What are the needs and the requests of the indigenous people of my region, towards people like me, essentially. And, really trying to pay attention to that first. One of the requests was for assistance repopulating native plants and animal life in the area, and helping to kind of repatriate certain lands for ceremonial use. So that's a project that I can very joyfully donate my time to, on behalf of Heartscapes, on behalf of my practice, and spend time, putting my hands in the ground, using my sweat equity and my time to contribute to that reforestation project, and similar projects related to that. So that's one of the places that my mind really goes. And again, allowing that question to be open, to be answered over time. I know that there are larger, more challenging, heavier ways in which I feel called to answer that question that I'm not ready for yet and that I don't fully understand yet. And so it's a question that I'm going to continue living into, but it's one that really takes nurturing. It really takes continuing to be in touch with what's actively happening in our region. When we think about something like land back and something like the relationship between the business, the livelihood, the homes of, European descended Americans like myself, and the indigenous people who are here. So I think I'll pause there. That was the one that rose most to the surface, but there are others that we might circle back to.
Yeah, I acknowledge all of those efforts as really beautiful and meaningful, not just to you, but to a bigger community. So, yeah, I think if I go into, my whole story about how I wanted to give back really started when I had kids. And if you had kids before, you read like these kids, especially when they're super young and they start to learn how to identify animals. Um, I'd like see these children's books about orangutans and polar bears and tigers and lions and elephants. And my heart really broke. It simply just broke thinking to, as I read this to my children, by the time they're adults, some of these animals could be completely extinct, completely wiped off the earth. And when I think about the connection to Reiki, Reiki being this universal energy that's in everything. And if healing is wholeness, the thought of um, something like a wild tiger, not being able, not having space on this planet to be in the wild. That felt like there's a piece of ourselves that gets lost from that. When we think about the threats, the environmental threats to biodiversity, and the threats that are being real, are quite real, and being faced by wild animals on the verge of extinction all over the planet. And so when I'm looking to give back, I love your focus on your community. For me, my focus was more globally. What are those things that all of us really can unite behind? And how can I do something that makes a difference, but maybe invite others into this work to also make a difference and see what positive change we could create together. So when I look at the Reiki Raise community group, I think it has like 16,000 members. There's other Reiki groups on social media that have well over 100,000 members, and I would have this vision, and I get it that it's kind of grandiose, but this vision of what if we were all giving $1 for the sessions that we provide, and if we did it all together, what kind of difference would it make for animals in the wild? And think of like wild tigers in particular, like what a difference it could make if Reiki practitioners all over the world were donating, and we could make like a huge difference. And why that cause in particular is so important to me, like I said about my children, but also um, biodiversity and land conservation and protecting wild animals is a really powerful way to protect the environment. So it not only protects the environment from deforestation, it protects the environment, it protects the local indigenous communities that surround that space, and it can protect the species itself. And so I made the choice about 2 years ago to start donating $1 for every Reiki session I provide to the World Wildlife Fund. And and over the course of the last few years, I think I've raised about $1,000 through different events and donating $1 for every Reiki session I provide. And I'm opening it up to any other Reiki practitioner who felt inspired to make this same pledge. So I'll leave a link to that in the show notes, and you can make a one-time donation to the fundraiser I've started, or donate like I do every quarter, count up all the Reiki sessions I provide, and then throw $1 into the kitty for that. And you know what it does? It helps me feel less disempowered. And there's obviously changes. Like sometimes I get caught up thinking like, well, if I was president, if I ruled the world, and if I could make big changes, this is what I'd like to see. And I don't think that mental health space is all that healthy for me, actually. But I do need to step back from it and say, like, I want to do something a little bit, to something little that I can manage, that works well for me, that's in alignment with my values, and doing that consistently over a period of time so that I can see the impact that that creates. So I wanted to invite anybody who's listening to join in on my fundraiser, on this fundraiser through the Reiki Healing Society. Um, and I also acknowledge that, this My Value Around the World Wildlife Fund is my value. So encourage you to donate $1 to an organization that you really believe in. And make sure to tell your community about it, that you're doing this for an organization and why it matters to you. Because I think doing that really is a great way to showcase your values to your clients. It's a great way to give back to your community or to the world. And it invites people to feel really good themselves also about the work that you're doing, the money that they're giving to you, knowing that it does serve a greater good. And another thing I can say is if money is like you were saying, Michaela, if money is not really the resource that you have to share, um, it's always really great to volunteer, to show up, to be a part of your town council, to be a part of your local community in ways that feel really inspiring to you. And by doing that, you put yourself out there, you show yourself as a healer and a leader to the community. And I think that really does make an impact on the clients we're able to serve, and people feeling more inclined to want to support your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, from the perspective of Reiki's origins, which you and I both endeavor to learn and practice and orient towards Reiki from the perspective of its Japanese origins, the concept of interconnection is such a central foundational point. And, really, as I'm hearing you talk, really what this is about is in what way can we recognize that our practice itself, like the business entity, or if it's not a business for you, listener, however you relate to your practice with regard to how it interacts with the world, it's a question of interconnection and interrelationship. Our business entities are entities, and they are in an ecosystem of other entities, which include, the people, the communities, the animals, the land itself, the history of all that comes to bear on supporting any business to exist. And, so many people get into practicing the system of Reiki from this desire to be generous, to give back, to positively impact the world. And so I know just from talking with hundreds of Reiki practitioners over the years that there already is such a desire and an impulse and a active energy towards having good, strong, generous integrity around this point of how can our businesses be a blessing to the communities and spaces and land around us. There's so much happening in that area, people volunteering their time, bringing their resources into, VAs and hospitals and children's centers and, all kinds of different ways in which the Reiki community has this impulse to be in good, right relationship with the communities that we're situated inside of. So I just really want to celebrate that, right? Those who are watching, you probably have in mind something that you would like to be involved with, have already been involved with, have observed others being involved with, that really kind of answers this question of how can we be a blessing to the spaces and people around us. We would love to hear about that. Where are the endeavors that you are engaged with? What has your heart been called to? Is that donating money? Is that working with people? Is that focusing on animals? Is it focusing on environments? We would love to hear, because each of those efforts matters. It all adds up. It all becomes part of that interconnected community and that interconnected entity that is Reiki as a phenomenon in the world, the energy that animates us and binds us together. So please do share down below what comes up for you as you listen to this conversation. What does integrity to your social and environmental landscape mean to you inside of your practice? And Carrie, thank you so much for this ongoing conversation. The things that we mentioned will be linked down below. I believe we have one more conversation scheduled in this series, and it's a really it's a potent one. It's one that when you originally posed this topic, it felt like a mystery. Like, where will this conversation take us? And that is the question of how can we be in good integrity with Reiki itself, with Reiki as a phenomenon in the world, as a spiritual phenomenon. What does it mean to be in good integrity with the phenomenon of Reiki itself? And we will have that conversation over on your channel, because we are pitching these conversations back and forth. So folks, I will leave a link down below for Carrie's channel, where you can find not only that next conversation, but a couple of the previous ones that we've had in this series. Please do jump over there, follow along with Carrie and with this conversation. So any parting words, Carrie, for our friends?
Yeah, and I think the final thing would just be like, if you're feeling like you want to give, or there's this desire, but you feel disempowered or feel disconnected from how you can, I'd say just continue to explore, and don't deny the little things that you're doing that help others make the world a better place. Don't deny the little things that you're doing for yourself to build lasting wealth and stability for yourself and your family, but also looking out and through that broader lens. And I think, sometimes the tendency is to think just about ourselves, what we can do, but acknowledging also our clients, our students, for the good that they're doing in the world, and supporting them to do the good that they're doing. Yeah, there's so much that we can, and we can never really see the impact of our actions, but just trusting that there is that ripple, that positive ripple. So if you do feel like bummed out, like, oh gosh, wish I could do more, I'd invite you to stick with that feeling, and choose one thing. Start with one thing that you can do that really makes a difference for yourself. And so when I think of my environmental overwhelm, or the things that I can't be in integrity with, like when I drive my gas guzzling car, well, actually I don't have gas guzzling car, but when I drive my car and still feel guilty about buying gas and all of these other things, kind of confronted with that almost daily, is just to remember the good that you are trying to do, channel that passion and that energy into that good thing. And I trust that because of our interconnection, that somebody else out there is trying to solve these bigger problems for all of us. So we just do our part little by little, and we might start to make a really big difference.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Carrie Varela of the Reiki Healing Society, thank you so much for this conversation. And thank you, folks, for traveling along with us as you go on this journey of finding integrity in your life, discovering where it already exists and deepening it. May you be deeply provisioned for that journey. Thanks so much for joining us. We love you. Goodbye.